In today's video, we are going to be getting the Platinum Trophy for Uncharted Drakes Fortune. This is the first of a 6-part series of my journey to Platinum every Uncharted game, and once every video is up on the channel, I will then make one big video with every game combined into one. This is one of my favourite series of games, and something I've wanted to Platinum for a long time, and I've just never got around to doing it, but I am so glad that I have now. Saying that, Uncharted 1 all the way up to Uncharted 4 I have played before, and so getting the Platinums is going to be significantly easier. I already have knowledge of the game, a few of the miscellaneous and combat trophies, and also all of the collectibles already collected, so all I actually need to do is complete the games on crushing difficulty and do a little bit of cleanup here and there. Don't worry though, not every game is going to be basically just cleaning up. I haven't played Lost Legacy, nor have I played Golden Abyss, so when it comes to those videos, it will be a completely fresh and new experience for me. But they are going to be coming a little bit later on. Just before we start though, here is a list of all of the trophies I'd already earned for this game back in 2017. As you can see, I completed the game on normal, as well as got all of the collectibles and a few combat related trophies, so we are going to be starting this off with 24 trophies out of the 46 needed for the Platinum. Anyway, without further ado, let's earn our first Uncharted Platinum. Enjoy. We begin the game as Nathan Drake, which for those of you who don't know is the main character in every game except for Lost Legacy. And joining us here we have a journalist named Elena Fisher who is with us hoping to get some footage for a TV show that she's working on. We are out in the middle of the ocean because we are in search of Sir Francis Drake's coffin, which luckily enough we managed to find. Opening the coffin though, we don't find the skeleton of the man himself, but we do find a lockbox containing Francis's journal. Before being able to take a closer look at it though, we end up getting ambushed by a number of pirates, and then we are left to defend the ship and ourselves until help arrives. Which brings us to the first bit of combat of the game, which for crushing difficulty isn't too difficult, however that changes pretty quickly later on. This also sets up what the rest of the game is going to be like, because nearly after every conversation in this game comes a combat sequence. To be fair, there's probably 5 more combat sequences for every conversation. I don't hate it, but it is a little bit annoying. But because this one was so easy, I did try to knock out a trophy for killing 5 enemies with a brutal combo, which thankfully I managed to do, unlocking the first trophy back on this game, Brutal Brawler. Eventually our best friend Sully arrives with a plane and manages to save the both of us, and while making our escape we fill Sully in on our findings, and after landing we find out that Sir Francis had actually discovered El Dorado, the legendary lost city of gold, and we decide that Elena is just going to hold us back, and so decide to leave her stranded on the island while the two of us go it alone. Following the clues, we end up finding ourselves wandering through a jungle and eventually stumble across some old ruins, and heading deeper inside them we discover that El Dorado wasn't actually a city of gold, but rather a statue of gold. However, the statue is no longer here, as by the tracks nearby it seemed to have been dragged away, and so of course we follow them back into the jungle, which eventually leads us to an abandoned Nazi U-boat. We decide to go and check it out and give Sully the journal for safekeeping. Inside the boat we find pretty much the whole crew is still here, yet very much not alive, with one of them holding onto a map showing the location of where the statue had likely been taken. We decide to head back to meet up with Sully, on the way knocking over a torpedo and nearly ending our adventure early. Outside though we find out that Sully had been captured by a man named Gabriel Roman. You see, he knew where to find us because Sully actually owes him a massive debt and promised to pay him back with what he found in El Dorado. Of course, Roman, being the typical evil villain that he is, decided why have some of it when he could have all of it, and together with some hired mercenaries they had followed us up until this point. They then take the map from us, and because we are now no longer of any use, he decides to shoot Sully. And we were almost next, but remember that torpedo we knocked over earlier? Well, it blew up, buying us enough time to grab the map and make an escape. We eventually run into Elena again, who had decided to follow us, and after telling her everything that's happened, including the death of Sully, we decide to get to Sully's plane and head to the next location. Of course, it wasn't a nice pleasant stroll back to the plane, and we had to fight our way through Roman's men, which is a good time to quickly touch on what most of this game and a lot of the other games following this consist of. We head to a location believed to house the treasure, only to find out that it's actually somewhere else. We then get ambushed and get our clues taken away from us, where we have to then fight through a ton of enemies and then head to the next location for the same thing to happen all over again. There is of course story in between each of these events and a decent amount of conversation between characters, although how important a lot of these combos are to the story is negligible, and as I said, most of the time we have combat straight after them and then throughout most of the rest of the chapters. So if it feels like I'm skipping a lot of stuff, just know none of it was integral to the story, and it's safe to assume that I killed quite a few enemies and probably died quite a few times going through it. Anyway, continuing on, we successfully make our way to the plane, but as we are flying to the next location, we end up getting shot down by the mercenaries and have to abandon the plane, in the process leaving the map on the plane and getting split up from Elena. From here we make our way through yet another jungle in search for the map and Elena, running into plenty of combat along the way and dying more times than I care to admit. And from this point on, this is where the combat really begins to ramp up. Like, they lure you in with a false sense of security for the first few chapters, and then boom, they just go all in and proceed to fist your bumhole, non-consensually of course, because there is no way on earth I gave him consent. Saying that though, we do manage to nab the trophy 250 headshots for, well, getting 250 headshots. We eventually find the map in the remains of the plane, and while continuing to search for Elena, we manage to grab another trophy for getting a total of 20 kills with the Wes 44 revolver. We do of course end up finding Elena, but before we can reach her we end up getting shot at by an RPG and we get captured and thrown into a prison where we meet our old rival Eddie Raha, who is also working for Roman. Luckily though, we didn't have to stick around and catch up for too long, as Elena actually found us and broke us out of prison. We then make our escape on one of the many defend the car while driving sequences I hate in these games because I always die, and eventually end up running into a dead end, so decide to just reverse straight off the cliff into the water below to escape. We then have to make our way through a flooded city, which is another section of this game that I don't really like because we have to use a jet ski in order to progress through it, and we get shot at a hell of a lot, and obviously you're using a jet ski, there's not a lot of cover, and so when we do make it back on dry land we come to the conclusion that this whole thing is too dangerous, as if that wasn't apparent already, and end up deciding to try and find a boat to escape the island, even though Elena, with her seductive charm, tries to convince us to stay, which she does end up doing later anyway. Continuing on through the next few chapters in search of this boat, we end up splitting up from Elena for a little while, during which we are given one of the hardest combat encounters I've had to go through in this game so far, leading me to dying multiple times, but in the process racking up a decent amount of kills with the dragon sniper that could be found nearby, which of course unlocks another trophy. Now, spoiler alert, we don't get on the boat, but when we meet back up with Elena, we do find out that Sullivan is still alive and appears to be working with Roman. So now we decide, rather than going for the treasure, we are going to both rescue and question Sully on what the hell he is doing. Elena loses her camera, a few more chapters go by, and a hell of a lot more kills go by, unlocking yet another trophy for getting 20 kills with the Desert Eagle. We end up finding Sully, and of course we are pissed that he's working with Roman. However, he tells us that he's actually been giving them the runaround and purposefully misleading them while he waited for us to rescue him. He also tells us that he managed to survive the gunshot because the journal we gave him before we went into the U-boat earlier actually stopped the bullet. While misleading Roman and his men though, he was able to find out more information about the treasure and reckons it's somewhere nearby, and so of course we go and search for it. In the process, getting into yet again even more combat and unlocking the trophy Dynamite Master for killing 3 enemies with a single explosion 5 times. A short while later, me and Elena end up getting split up from Sully again and find our way into an underground treasure vault. However, there was no treasure, and the only thing we do find in here is the skeleton of Sir Francis Drake. Eddie then comes running into the vault, but he wasn't after us and was instead running away from some creepy naked human vampire beast, and even though we try to hold them off, Eddie eventually gets Rahad down into the abyss below. I don't even know what Rahad down below means, but what I do know is we need to get the hell out of here, and so me and Elena skedaddle skidoodle out of the vault into a German bunker. We then have to find a way to power up the bunker in order to make an escape, and at the same time the game decides it's going to abandon its action adventure style and go horror instead, as we end up having to run through dark dingy hallways while avoiding the weird human vampire monster beast thingies. We also find out that the statue was never never taken back to England by Sir Francis and never recovered by the Germans because it's actually cursed and is the thing responsible for creating these weird human monster hybrids. Also, Elena ends up getting captured by Roman and Navarro, and so we team up with Sully to go and rescue her. And I know that I haven't mentioned Navarro before, but Navarro has been there from the beginning with Roman, I just never mentioned him. Anyway, we end up catching up to the both of them, getting ready to airlift the statue away, but just before doing so, Roman opens up the statue because, in case you didn't know, it opens, and upon doing so ends up getting cursed and turning into one of those monsters before Navarro puts him down. Navarro then reveals that he had been planning this from the start and continues to airlift the statue away while taking Elena and escaping. We jump onto the statue and end up getting taken to his ship, where we fight through Navarro's men, which surprisingly was pretty easy, and then take him down by giving him a swift kick in the nuts, finishing the game and unlocking both the hard and crushing difficulty trophies. Navarro does try to get a sneaky attack in, but ends up getting pulled off of the side of the boat along with the statue and sinks to the bottom of the ocean. So we ended the bad guy, saved the world, and got the girl, who also gave us back our ring after we left it down in the vault. So overall, pretty damn happy ending. We then get picked up by Sully and sail off into the sunset, finishing the game's main story. From here, it was time to clean up the remaining trophies we had to unlock. Most of these were just combat related trophies, so nothing too difficult, and to make this even easier, we could also use the bonus section that we have access to now to give us the weapons and everything we need to get the trophies. Before getting the combat related trophies though, I first decided to do the speedrun related trophies. Thankfully, we don't need to speedrun the entire game like we have to in Uncharted 4, we just need to speedrun 3 specific chapters. Honestly, it's pretty easy, so I'm not going to go into much detail here. We sped run chapter 5 for the These Walls Can't Stop Me trophy, chapter 12 for the Up a Short Creek Without a Paddle trophy, and chapter 16 for the Speedy Reunion trophy. And just as a little extra trophy here, which is part of the extra trophy list added to the remaster, I got the Cheetah trophy for activating my first tweak. From here, apart from 1 or 2, it was pretty much all combat related trophies, so let's quickly go through them. We got 50 kills with the Micro 9mm for a trophy, 50 kills with the Moss 12 shotgun for a trophy, 30 kills with the M79 for a trophy, a non-combat related trophy called Shoot Some B-roll for Elena for using photo mode for the first time, finishing up with more combat related trophies like the 2 Steelfish trophies for killing 5 enemies and 10 enemies in a row with a single punch after weakening them with gunfire, Brutal Expert for killing 5 enemies in a row with a brutal combo, Brutal Slugger for killing 20 enemies in total with a brutal combo, and both Hangman trophies, each for killing enemies with weapons and grenades while hanging, which then unlocked the game's platinum trophy. And as one extra, I got another trophy for comparing statistics with a friend. But with that being the platinum trophy, plus a couple of extras, this now brings us to the end of Uncharted Drakes Fortune. Probably my least favourite in the series, but still a game that I absolutely loved playing through and will 100% play through it again in the future. After all, we have the platinum, but not the 100%, and that requires a speed run and a playthrough on an even harder difficulty than crushing called Brutal. So that will come sometime in the future. But yeah guys, this brings us to the end of the video. Definitely a game I'd recommend you guys attempt to get the platinum for. It's really not too difficult. Anyway, if you guys enjoyed the video, then a like and a share would help me out massively. It shows your support, and your support is always appreciated on the channel. Leave your thoughts on Uncharted down below in the comments, as well as any suggestions for future games, and if I like them enough, there will 100% be a video. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on to stay up to date with everything I upload. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.